in Big Bear, which I didn't graduate from Big Bear. I actually graduated from Palm Springs High, but 80% of my child rearing was up in Big Bear. So I went to our 30-year high school reunion up there, and it was awesome. There's about, my high school class up there is about 170 graduated from that class, and about 80 of them showed up for the 30-year reunion. That's pretty good odds. And it was totally depressing to realize, I was telling my friend Kenny and I go, dude, as you just began talking to people, they were talking about their second and their third marriages. Almost all of them. Almost all of them. They all freaked out that I'm a priest or a pastor or whatever, but I had such a great in because our friend Kyle, that we all knew, died, and I was just real quick to say, Kyle's life, his death just really got me thinking about Jesus, and I kept pointing to my friend Steve Gifford. He started telling me about Jesus. I just got to witness to the whole group about the Lord. It was really cool. Jeff Willis is the fat kid in school that I always made fun of. He's our fire chief up there now. It's kind of cool. And Hastings guy that I played war ball with, he's a high patrolman, but just got to meet them all. And it was just, I remember leaving there and just thanking God. I had a real spirit of thankfulness and gratitude. Because if Christ had to come into my life, who would I be? Who would I be? And what marriage would I be on? What substances would I be addicted to? And so forth. And just had this spirit, this attitude of thankfulness. So, and I keep having it. So I keep singing that song. I told PJ I've been humming this song in the shower every morning for like the last 4 or 5 days. So I want us to sing it. So this is, by the way, when I was teaching Biola, this is called the spiritual discipline of thankfulness, where we are the means of grace, where it's a privilege that we just spend some time in gratitude and thankfulness and reflection of who our God is and what our God is. Hey, a time of reflection of this church. I am very thankful for the people who started this church 40 years ago, who God built this church on a good, solid foundation. I'm thankful that this church has never experienced moral failure ever within the pastoral staff of this church. This church has never gone through a church split. I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful that this church has never been accused of misappropriating funds or monies. I'm very thankful that this church has had a strong emphasis in missions and in accurate biblical teaching. I'm very thankful that this church has had an international flair to it. I'm very thankful that this church spawned a daughter church called Fosse in the 90s. I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful that the Lord has brought us back together again in these days to worship and serve Him together as an international church. I'm thankful for a Jewish congregation that worships right here, right now, and that we have one spirit. They are not renters at all. They are ministry partners as we work in the city. I'm just thankful. If you just look at, if you think just about our church, there's so much to be thankful. I'm thankful for the thousands of people that's been impacted because of this place. It's just good to reflect and think upon the goodness of the Lord. It's a spiritual discipline. So let me tell you a bit about me, so you guys just probably have thoughts, questions. As you know, that coming into my leading that trip to Israel, my body broke out in hives. You all know that, right? And Dr. Carr, who goes to this church, has been my doctor, and just I'm thankful for him. He's treating me for free. He's been pumping me with $1,000 shots every month for free, called Xolair. But when I got diagnosed, he says that this was induced by stress. And it's kind of weird when a doctor looks at you and asks you, are you stressed? If someone came up to you and said, are you stressed, what would you say? I don't know, am I stressed? I guess I'm stressed. I think we're all stressed. But he says that once this was let out of the box, it's just my cells have been warring against each other. And he says I have a 75% chance that I can be rid of this within a year or two. 25% chance this will be the rest of my life. So right now I was on like 6 medications. The worst one was called prednisone, which, has anyone been on prednisone in here? It makes you really irritable. My wife said that now she knows what I look like if I was ever on a period. can I be on, I mean, so she was, and I was on one for about 4 months, and I was on 40 milligrams, which is pretty gnarly. My father-in-law, who's had a heart transplant, has been on prednisone for like 20 years. He's on 2 milligrams. I was on 40. So, and it just made me a jerk, to be quite honest. But I'm off of that. I'm on 5 meds now, and but my hives now are manageable. I get them some, like right there, I've got one, but it's just manageable. So anyway, so during my sabbatical, in terms of just what we did, I spent time with my family quite a bit. We went to the river a few different times, 4 or 5 times. We have my dad built a house down at the Colorado River, and I spent a lot of time down there just floating on a boat in the middle of the lake, sometimes by myself, and just with the wind blowing and just praying and seeking God. Did a trip to Hawaii with Cinda's family, which was awesome. I just got back from New York City. I was there a week with our ancestors are all from the East Coast. The Winans were the Dutch ancestors that go way back. Found out that one of my relatives was thrown in jail by Abraham Lincoln. That was kind of cool. I'll tell you that story later if you want to know. Ross Winans. Found out one of my relatives was at Gettysburg in the New Jersey Regiment. It's kind of cool. I walked the fields of Gettysburg, so that history was just really spurned within me. In terms of personally, I spent a lot of time practicing journaling, the spiritual discipline of journaling, just writing letters to God every day. And that, to me, I don't know if you've ever journaled before, but as I do, I feel God kind of communicates to me in journaling, and I'm able to process thoughts, even from a week ago to now, and just almost can see a pattern and sense that. So early in the morning, I practice waking up early and journaling, and I always called it the Fabulous 4. Journaling, scripture, exercise every day, and reading some book to help my walk with God. I called them the Fabulous 4 that I practiced while I was in my sabbatical. And so everybody kept asking, what am I? I'm on Sabbath, and I'm on Shabbat and Shalom. I'm in rest and peace. That's all I'm trying to be, the flower child of peace. Peace. One thing I did do, though, is I think some of you know, I've been being coached by a guy in our church denomination named Scott Rideout. He's got a church out in Arizona, and I did drive out and spend a weekend with him and met with his ministry staff and leadership team and small group pastors and youth pastor and the children's pastor, and sat in on 3 of their services and just spent some time to see how they did church, which is pretty cool. And just kind of using that as a time to reflect and think, and boy, he really spun my head quite a bit. So it was good. So I think just to share with you, my orders were is that I could do no communication or talk to anybody in the church for 3 months. Just get away from pastoral ministry, Pastor Frank. So I shut down all emails. For the 3 months I was gone, I know exactly nothing that happened here at all, nor did I want to. And for that first month, I kind of saw myself as trying to don't think about it. And then for the next month, it was like, this is kind of nice. And then for the next month, it's like, okay, now I need to start to re-engage to come back. So that was kind of my journey a little bit. I did cheat and go on the men's golf trip, and I told them all that while I was there, I'm a civilian, and you can't talk to me about anything. I'm just here to enjoy the fellowship and play golf. So I could hear nothing. So that was nice. So that's just kind of been what I did for these last 3 months. So it was really cool. Time. So let me share with you a little bit about some things that I think God was just spurring into my heart. And it's kind of interesting. They keep saying that every 7 years you need to reinvent yourself. As a church, you need to reinvent yourself. And actually, it's been 7 years that I've been the senior pastor at Goodbridge. And so I've just been, by the way, I read books called Sticky Church. I read a book called The Next Generation Leader. I read a book called 7 Essentials of Effective Ministry. These are pretty good books, besides just my daily scripture reading and so forth. And just some of them I liked, some of them I didn't, but just had a good time with that. I drove out to Arizona and met my friend Scott and sat in on his church services. Does anyone see the movie or the TV show The Voice? Do you see some of that? Okay, so check this out. This was their deal. They they actually were starting a series in the fall called The Voice, and they actually hired some of the people from that TV show to come in and lead worship on their campus throughout the week or throughout that month, and they just used it as a big marketing campaign. And it was kind of interesting of the 4 people they brought, like 2 of them didn't even believe in God, and they were in the back cussing before they would come up to lead the church in songs, but it drew a lot of people. And it was an interesting thing, and as I was journaling, I was going back to my hotel room, and I was asking fundamental questions. And here's a fundamental question. How would you answer this question? Is the Sunday morning worship service for believers or for non-believers? Let me ask the question. This is it. Is the Sunday morning worship service for believers or for non-believers? Both. To what degree? I'm still thinking about it. Let me tell you straight up. My friend's church in Arizona, it is like 90% non-believer. They are geared. They are seeker-driven. This is the buzzword. They are driven. They're very adamant. If you're a churchgoer, we don't want you here. We want people that wouldn't go to church to come here. That's their mission, and they're adamant about that. And hey, man, they are growing like leaps and bounds. And people that walk in their church don't. I mean, it was so interesting. Like in the church service I went to, the guy that was doing announcements came up with another guy, and they did lip syncs during the beginning. And people were laughing and stuff, and I'm sitting in the back going, like, this is irreverent. Like, they are seeker-driven. The Sunday morning service is for non-believers and brand new believers. That's their deal. And I'm home, I'm just writing in my, okay, Lord, so at what degree, and I'm looking at, how would you say Woodbridge is? At least for the last 5 years. Is Woodbridge, to what degree, are we seeker-sensitive? Are we seeker-driven? Is Woodbridge a seeker-driven church? Answer? No. The Sunday morning worship service is for
believers.
To a high degree.
Absolutely.
Now, biblically, that's true. I mean, as a historical theologian, that's true. It's the assembly of believers. It's biblical. But man, I'll tell you, God's blessing their ministry, and it was pretty cool. I would, and if you say seeker-driven, then I would hear you say like seeker-indifferent, maybe. And then you would have seeker-sensitive. And to what degree are we sensitive to seekers that come in every Sunday? To a certain degree. Some say no.
I think your question presumes something. You said, are we focused on seekers who come in? I think the question really ought to be, are we focused on the community looking for seekers to bring in?
Okay, but let me stick with the question I asked. When a seeker comes in, are we sensitive to that seeker that's walked in the door? They know nothing. They might even be scared or afraid or never been to church. Are we sensitive to that individual come in by how we do announcements, how we greet people, even how we teach, or how we even speak or go through the scriptures? Are we sensitive to that person?
No.
To yes or no, or to what degree? See, remember right before we left, I was saying, hey, the last Sunday of the month, I was trying to communicate to the church. Last Sunday of the month, I want to have first Sunday is communion. By the way, is communion for a seeker?
No.
They don't do communion at the church that I was in Arizona, because why would you do communion and tell everybody, by the way, you can't take this unless you become a Christian? So they do communion in their small groups, not in the main service, because they are seeker-driven. Interesting, right? So I mean, it's just spinning your mind and how you do this. As I was leaving, I was saying, hey man, if the first Sunday of the month is for communion, the last Sunday of the month, let's just make that like an invited on-Christian Sunday or something like that. And my goal is, the last Sunday of every month, we're going to have testimonies, gospel presentation, an invitation to see the Lord. That's happening at the end of every month at Woodbridge. And I want to gear our people. I was even trying to get them to maybe pull back a little bit and say, we need to become more seeker sensitive. And maybe even as we're sharing Christ, if I'm going to invite them to church, this would be a good day to do it. Does it make sense? But how do you even give that announcement? What if they invited someone that didn't know Jesus on the Wednesday, or on the third Sunday of the month, and we get up and make an announcement, hey, all of you, remember to bring your non-Christian friends next week. How would that make that non-Christian feel who's there on that? How would that make them feel? These guys are a scam, they're trying to get me or something. How would you even make the announcement and be sensitive to the person that's there? You see what I'm saying? This is the stuff that I'm wrestling with as a pastor as we're looking toward the future. Check this out. Our vision statement is a long, drawn-out vision statement that we created as we were merging two churches into one church. And it's a long, drawn-out mission statement that deals with that, Woodbridge, our vision is that people from all nations, we're all one, there should be no separation and so forth. And it just becomes this long, drawn-out deal of connecting people with God and equipping people for life. All right, you get that? Connecting people with God and equipping people for life. I like that. I've always thought that was pretty good. Why am I here? Why is the church here? We want to connect people with God, we want to equip them for life. Over at my buddy's church, their vision is helping people meet, know, and follow Jesus. Pretty straight up, quite simple. And it's pretty cool. You go into the youth area and it says helping students meet, know, and follow Jesus. You go into the children's area and it says helping children meet, know, and follow Jesus. You go over to the men's urinal. You're taking a leak in the men's urinal, and guess what's right there at the urinal? Sun Valley Church is here to help men meet, know, and follow Jesus. I didn't go in the girls' urinal, but I probably assume as you close the door, it was probably there. I don't know. And I just was like, I was taken by that. I'm like, man, I really like that. The concept of having people meet Jesus. Remember right before I left, we did a series called More Than a Carpenter. It's all about meeting Jesus. Who is he? Is he a liar, lunatic, or Lord? Meet, know, right? But the real money is when people finally decide to follow him. And I just thought that was a great vision statement that I actually liked a lot better than ours. I almost would like to say Woodbridge Church is helping all people. There's that inclusiveness of all nations, or all times. People from all nations meet, know, and follow Jesus, and somehow trying to create something like that. The good thing about their church is that you could talk to people and everyone knew what it was because it just ran off their lips. And at ours, I don't even know if people on our leadership team could pop ours out and read it off the lips as quick. So I was just like, man, that's interesting. Just food for thought. It was an interesting, here's something for me. I'm an old youth pastor. You guys probably know that I'm an old youth pastor. This guy Scott was an old youth pastor. We actually did youth ministry at the same time in the 90s. And when we were when I was there at his church, their 5th and 6th grade program is 7 times the size of their youth program. Their 5th and 6th grade program on a Sunday morning is 7 times the size of their youth program. Why? Good question. He says, Frank, he goes, the things that you and I did back in the 90s and how we ran youth ministry, he says the whole youth culture has changed in America. Students now are more academically put upon at such earlier ages that students that back in the 90s that could come out for a midweek group, they don't have their grades would suffer if they did that. He said, the activities, says our youth there are so already entertained. If you do like, hey man, we're going to go to Magic Mountain or paintball and you invite your non-Christian friends. Hey, I've already done that. I've got Nintendo and Xbox and all these other things. He says, but what we found is that if you just take kind of that same package and move it down to 5th and 6th graders that are yet at first to feel the weight of academia to the lengths that they're going to, and there are people stuck at home and they would love to do that. And he says, man, we just found that as we just moved kind of an activities-based, program. We got someone in there, and they were like, man, you do a paintball trip, they were coming and inviting 10 friends each. He said it became this huge